Okay, the first thing that we need to do with this TAZ upgrade is to install the heat set inserts in the parts that need it. This is the Z nut spring. There's two of these, and these get 4 heat set inserts each, and I'm going to show you how these go in. It's really simple. You just take a soldering iron that you've heated up to about 350 Celsius or so, and you'll need a few of the heat set inserts that you got from McMaster Car. They're the units that were specified in the Thingiverse plans. And all you need to do is take a look at the insert and make sure you have it oriented correctly. I don't know if this will focus right, but there's a little lip at one end that should be facing down. So all you need to do is put the insert on the tip of your soldering iron and get your part ready and just slide it in. And just a little bit of pressure. You put it just a little bit under, pop it out, and then just press it in. Okay? And let it cool for a second. And there you go. I let that heat just a little bit too long, so we got some extra plastic on the outside, but that's all it takes. And it does stay warm for a while, so you don't want to burn yourself like I just did. And you just take the second one and then slide in there. And you can use this same technique for the Z-nut springs. And try to get it in as square as you possibly can. You don't want it at an angle. The part that I'm adding these to, by the way, are for the is for the microswitch itself that'll attach. And there you go. See? 2 perfect installs. Now let's get the other one ready. This block, it takes a little bit more work. The insert goes right here, so you can't apply it to a table. What I've done is I'm going to take a popsicle stick and be able to hold it flush so it'll fit properly. So let's go ahead and get that done. Let's turn it around so you can see it a little bit better. And we'll just slide it in like so. Whoops. And just kind of run it back and forth. You want to make sure that it's as flush as possible. And then I can turn my soldering iron off. And there you go. And then this component fits together just like in there. And make sure you follow the instructions. And next up, we'll cover the other tasks that need to be done. Okay, before we can get everything prepped up the way we need it, we need to take a couple of parts off of the TAZ. The reason for this is that the nut springs, the Z springs over here, these parts here, they have a spring inside of them and a nut that we need to scavenge out to be able to install in this part here. Actually, that's upside down. It goes in there like that. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is remove the hot end assembly. Okay, and the extruder comes off as well, because this back piece here is also replaced by this part here, except it's of course facing the other way. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take the 3mm Allen wrench that comes along in your kit, in your tool kit, and let's get this taken off. Go ahead and we'll just loosen that up just a little bit, and we should take the wires off of here. They're easily color coded, so you don't have to worry about forgetting which direction they go back together. And let's get this other one here out. And you might want to have a little bowl handy or something like that where you can keep all your hardware as you take it out, because you really don't want to lose it. There's the one bolt. And the other bolt. And this is kind of a sandwich, so pay close attention to how it goes together, because you've got your extruder drive on the top here, and then the hot end just kind of comes apart. And the way that sat was just like so. Okay, so we'll set that aside. And you might want to take this opportunity to use the included cleaning brush to clean the gunk out of the drive. And you'll have it, guaranteed. Okay, the next step is that we need to remove this assembly, and we'll show that next. Okay, I have the TAZ flipped around, and the reason for that is that we are going to remove this component here, okay, and we're going to replace it with this part. Okay, whoop, can't see that right there. Okay, in the order to do that, we're going to have to go ahead and take these 4 screws out, and then we're also going to have to loosen the bar here, right here, and the bar on the other side. And what we're going to do is we're just going to slide this out a little bit in order to catch this free, and then we'll be able to install the new back part there. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this camera adjusted so it doesn't want to fall over, and you guys can see how this whole process works. And we're going to use the 2mm wrench for this, I think. Yep. So we'll go ahead and we'll just get these loosened up a little bit here. And the reason that we only want to move this bar a little bit is because if we move it too much, we might mess with the alignment. We really don't want to mess with the factory alignment. Unless, of course, you know exactly what you're doing, and then in which case, hey, knock yourself out. I fall into the class of barely know what I'm doing, so I'm not going to mess with it. Or I'm going to mess with it as little as possible, because I really don't want to break it or misalign it so badly that it's beyond my ability to straighten out. So let's go ahead and get these out. And don't lose them. That would be bad. Remember, have a little bowl or something you can keep these bits in as you work with them. Come on. And that's that free, yeah. Boy, that's just not, there we go. Okay. Okay, so it looks like over here it is 2mm again on that side. So we'll loosen that up just a little bit there, and loosen this up just a little bit here, and then see if we can't rotate that and slide that just like so. And that pops off there really nice. Okay, instead of replacing, or instead of reusing this bushing, we're going to use a 10mm linear bearing that looks like that. And it only takes one, doesn't take two. And it slides in there off the wider open end here. And there's a little stop, so it only goes halfway through. And it should look like this when it's set up. So now that we've got that done, I see a little bit of plastic in there that I need to brush out. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get it put back on that bearing, or on the smooth rod, and drop it in there like so. And I don't know if you can see that, but you see how well that lines up with the existing holes. And then let's go ahead and get these screws put back in. And we'll go ahead and we'll get the... Actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and put the smooth rod back where it belongs. So we're going to go ahead and slide that back. And we want to put it back exactly where we got it, which means this end here on this end should be flush with the outside of the plastic, like so. You see how it's flush? You want to make it look like that. Let's take that back just a little bit. Okay. And then make sure we're all good there, and then we'll go ahead and we'll retighten the set screws. So there's one. You probably don't want to tighten them too much because I heard just a little bit of a crack in there, which means I tightened it down just a little bit too much on that one end. So take care when you're putting them back together. Okay, now let's get these put back in. And these heat set inserts are just awesome for this stuff because you don't have to worry about capture spaces for screw or for the nuts or anything else like that. They just go together so nice. It's almost like a mass-produced injection molded commercial product, except it's a 3D printed commercial product. And then after we get these in here, we'll go ahead and I'll tighten them down just a little bit more. And take care not to cross thread anything, because that's probably pretty easy to do with these little heat set inserts. Okay, let's tighten that down just a little bit. And make sure it's good and tight, but not too tight. And yeah, my hand's probably in the way and you can't see what's really going on, but okay, and there we go. And then that's all back together. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and replace the Z-springs. I wanted to get this done first because I didn't want to really disturb these. We're going to have to pin these in place to keep them from falling all the way to the bottom once we dismount them from the Z-axis springs. So let's go ahead and do that next. Okay, for this next step, what we're going to do is we're going to go after these two screws here and these two screws here on both sides to take these Z-axis springs here. We're going to take these off, but we don't want to damage the heat bed. So what I'm going to, instead of pinning it in place like I discussed earlier, I'm just going to let it rest on here, and so it's not going to scratch up my glass. So let's go ahead and start getting those taken off. Let's see if I can get this finicky little camera aimed properly. And I think again these are 2mm, which is correct. So go ahead and just loosen these up first. Don't take them all the way out, because we don't want the X-axis carriage dropping on us when the screws come out. So loosen the other side here. Okay, so I've got these loosened up. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take out the bottom two screws on each side. That's the one side. Let's go to the other one. And being as that I don't have a camera operator other than me, you don't get to see every single step I do. You'll just have to take it on faith that I'm doing the other side. Okay, so next we're going to take let's go ahead and we'll take off this back screw here, and we'll leave one screw holding it in place. And then we'll take that one screw off the other side. The idea here is that we want to be able to control that X carriage. We don't want it to fall. Okay, so let's take this last screw out of here. And it looks like we may not have to worry about it falling apart. No, or falling at all. It looks like it's pretty stout, which is surprising. It may just be the friction of the bearings, or the linear, not bearings, the bushings that are being used. Okay, so it looks like we have both sides free. So the next step is that we're going to have to take this assembly apart here, and this is just a clear piece of tube and a couple of wire ties that's holding the 6mm drive rod on here. Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do is get a pair of wire cutters, and we're going to clip that off real quick. Okay, should have had these present, but I screwed up and didn't have them handy. Let's take that off of there. Boy, that just does not want to come off of there, does it? Let's try clipping it from the other side. There we go. Okay. And then we're just going to unthread the rod and make sure that you don't forget which end is which. That's kind of important. So we'll just set that and let that rest like that. And then we're going to clip the other end here off. And take that plastic tube off. That plastic tube is going to be replaced by some solid parts that will grip the stepper motor more firmly. And I'm going to go ahead and carefully remove that off camera, and we'll resume with the next step. Okay, now that we've got the shaft, the little plastic shaft couplers removed, these, okay, we're going to go ahead and take the Z-nut springs off and just go ahead and thread them off just like you normally would, because what we need is we need the screw that's in there, and there is an M6 brass nut that we need to get out of there as well. So let's go ahead and just spin that off of there. Okay, now we'll set that back there. You want to keep that orientation because it's important. Okay, so we've got a spring in there and we've got a nut. So let's see how I can get that spring out of there without destroying it. There, and there's the spring. See? And then the other piece that's in there is that little brass nut, so let's pop that out of there. Okay. Oops. And that's our brass nut. Now, what we need to do is install your new brass nut that you got, plus that old one in here. Now, this one already has a nut in it that I installed previously. I had to draw it in there because it was too tight. So if you run into that, don't worry about it. The important one that needs to float is the one that goes in here. And over time, even if it's just a little bit too tight, it will wear a little bit. You notice that there's these 4 holes here, okay? The holes are designed such that if you have what would be deemed a proper fit, that gravity would allow the nut to drop out of there. So the designer put these holes in there so you could put like a piece of 3mm filament in the hole to prevent the spring from moving. Okay. And fortunately, or unfortunately for me, that's not required. But what we need to do is get that brass nut in that pocket there and then get the spring installed. So let's go ahead and we'll put the brass nut in here, hopefully. Get a good fit in there. And I like that. Turned out pretty well, actually. But we need to make sure that it's in there square. We don't need any issues. And then here's the tricky part. We need to put the spring in there without destroying the spring or our fingers in the process. See, that's not a whole lot of room to get that thing in there, is it? We really need to compress that spring. And I'm going to not do this on camera because the camera is kind of in my way, and I need to be able to see what's going on a little bit easier. So I'm going to stop the video here, install the spring, and then turn the video back on. Okay, I did this once by hand, so we're going to see if I can't do it again. Got my brass nut in there, and we're just going to take the spring and try to get the spring installed without hurting ourselves or anything else here. Looks like I got it the first try there again. And you want to make sure, because I can see a little bit of spring in there that's obstructing it, and I'm going to move that around just a little bit to see if I can't make that behave a little bit more. And there we go. So now we've got our old nut spring that we took stuff off, and you see the big pattern change here. This one's just a little bit stiffer. And there we go. So let's go ahead and get these put back in place. Okay, in order to get these installed, the first thing that we need to do is get them put back on the shafts, and then we need to take the shaft collars that were printed as part of the other parts, these here, okay, and these are what's going to bind the drive rod to the stepper motor. And if you'll notice, there's a flat spot there, okay, on one end, and it's rounded on the other. You want to make sure that you put the spot with a flat spot against the stepper shaft, because the stepper shaft does have a portion that's flatted, and it's just for, or this new design takes advantage of that, okay. Installing those, or the process of installing those, is kind of difficult to film, so I'm just going to show what the end result is, and we'll go from there. Okay, I finally got all the parts installed. Look over here, and this is the new coupler and the new Z-nut spring. Couple of pieces of advice: when you're putting this together, make sure that you have both sides at the same height when you thread it onto the rod, okay? And when you're done, measure from this top rail up here, okay, to the top of this on this side, and do the same on the other side. The idea is that you want to make sure that the x-axis rod here is the same distance on both ends to the top, okay? That will ensure that it's as square as you can reasonably get it. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten these down. I only have them finger tight right now. And then we'll move on to installing the actual switch, the wiring, and the activator that deploys and retracts the microswitch that's used for the bed probe. One thing I should have noted in the last section, to adjust these, okay, what you need to do, and unless you want to get into the Rambo control box and unplug the motors, you need to hold on to one of the shaft couplers while you adjust the other one by hand. Because if you don't, they'll both turn at the same time, because as you turn it, it's going to induce a voltage that the other stepper motor will pick up, and they'll both move. What we're going to do right now is set the activation bar into the bracket here. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have this properly sanded so it fits, and this is really smooth, okay? Because what happens is when the system is ready to be used, it's going to slide this all the way over. Okay, I'll turn the camera so you can see it. It's going to slide this all the way over and hit that little block, and then go in here, and it deploys it, okay? And then it'll go and do its thing, and as it goes back, okay, it will hit the other side and retract the probe, okay? And for that to work as well as possible, this can't be too tight, okay? It can be a little tight, and it looks like I oversanded just a little bit, but it's okay, because all that is a deployment and retraction mechanism. It's not what the microswitch is attached to, okay? One of the parts that you saw me use the heat set inserts with is the actual deployment probe here, okay? And that fits in there just like so. So what we're going to go ahead and do is dig out a screw to install that with. And I'm hoping I have the right screw. If I don't, I will be finishing this tomorrow, because I don't have any 3mm screws. And let's see how that fits. And nope, that's too big. Okay, but you get the general idea is that the deployment, or the Z probe sits right here, and the microswitch, when it's installed, will sit just like that. And there you go. And it'll come down, it'll strike it and come up and do its thing. And then when it's deployed, it'll be down like this. And then when it retracts, it comes up like that, you see, and it gets it out of the way. So we will pause it for right now, and I will get my hands on the screws that I need, and we'll resume this tomorrow. Okay, I've got everything connected up and wired in. I figured it'd just be easier to do that than to stumble through it with a video camera in my way half the time. Anyway, the probe is in the deployed position, okay? And when it goes all the way over here, it will go into the stowed position like so, okay? I'll do this real slow. And that's about where it stops. And you see, you know, the extruder's not on there, but it's now above the level of the extruder. And when it runs the other direction to deploy it, it hits the other side and deploys. What I did with the wiring is I ran it inside the loom that you can see here, and it goes all the way over, down, around, and under. And right in here, I've replaced these two connectors, and we're piggybacking on the Z probe, okay, or the Z-axis switch. The switch on both of them is normally open, which means the switch is not closed until it's activated, as opposed to normally closed where the switch is activated until it's, or the switch is closed until it's activated, and then it opens when you hit the switch. That's not how these are done. What I'm going to go ahead and do is get the extruder connected. and the hot end put back on, and do the firmware upload and see how that works. Okay, now you'll get to see the fruits of all of this labor. It's sitting at a 0 point right now, and now I'm going to run the auto calibration routine that will level the printer. I've got it set up in the script so it goes up to a height of about 40 millimeters above. And you can see it just deployed the probe. And it's beginning the auto calibrations here, or the auto leveling sequence right now. It touches 3 points, stows the probe, and then goes to the home position. And now it's going to stow the probe. And there we are, we're done. One of the things I want to show you is the coupling here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the bed around, and you'll see as I'm moving in the X and Y axis, this will change to compensate for the tilt in the bed. So we're going to go ahead and we'll move it just a little bit in the X-axis. You see how that moves? It's making sure that the nozzle stays at a consistent height no matter where it is on that bed. And that is all there is to it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're having as easy as a time as I did getting this put together. Pay attention to the parts lists so you don't end up short of hardware like I did. And enjoy it. Thanks a lot, folks.